Level 1, the listener. The letter is already open when you arrive. That alone tells you something is wrong. Servants are not supposed to read correspondence addressed to members of the royal household. Yet the parchment lies unfolded across the steward's desk. The royal seal has been broken carefully. Deliberately. The steward does not look up. He simply points toward the final paragraph. Read it. You do. A provincial lord is requesting additional military funding. 20,000 gold crowns. Border security concerns. Increased bandit activity. The usual excuses. The steward waits. Then he asks a simple question. Do you believe him? You hesitate. That is your first mistake. In the royal court, hesitation reveals uncertainty. Uncertainty attracts predators. You answer carefully. No. The steward nods. The lord receives nothing. 3 months later, investigators discover the missing money already hidden in accounts belonging to his cousins. The steward remembers your answer. More importantly, he remembers that you understood the real lesson. Facts matter. Motives matter more. That is how your career begins. Not through influence. Through observation. You spend your days carrying documents between ministers, advisors, military officials, and royal accountants. Nobody notices servants. That makes servants dangerous. You hear arguments behind closed doors. You learn which nobles gamble beyond their means. Which generals maintain mistresses. Which ministers secretly hate one another. Information accumulates slowly. Like dust. Most people ignore it until the room becomes impossible to breathe in. 6 months later, the steward promotes you to administrative clerk. Your salary doubles. From 12 silver crowns per week to 24. The increase means almost nothing. Access means everything. You stop viewing conversations normally. Every compliment becomes a transaction. Every favor becomes leverage. Every friendship becomes an investment. You tell yourself you're simply paying attention. That is how manipulation begins. Nobody wakes up intending to become dangerous. Level 2, the broker. The prince's gambling debt reaches 87,000 gold crowns. Officially, nobody knows. Unofficially, everyone important knows. The challenge isn't information. The challenge is controlling who receives it. That responsibility falls to you. The prince cannot publicly repay the debt without creating scandal. The lenders cannot collect without creating enemies. Someone must find a solution. You arrange meetings. Move money through intermediaries. Create charitable foundations that don't actually exist. Within 6 weeks the debt disappears. The prince survives. The lenders profit. The royal family avoids embarrassment. You receive 5,000 gold crowns deposited into an account under another name. Your annual income used to be less than 200. The money changes something. Not greed. Perspective. You begin understanding how power actually functions. Laws matter. Influence matters more. The court pretends authority flows downward from the throne. It doesn't. Authority flows through relationships. The king rules because enough powerful people benefit from his rule. Everything else is decoration. Nobles begin seeking you privately. Military officers request introductions. Judges request favors. Merchants request protection. You become a broker. Not important enough to make decisions. Important enough to connect people who do. The court becomes smaller. More intimate. More dangerous. You discover another truth. Everyone claims loyalty. Nobody practices it when survival becomes expensive. Level 3, the architect. The king suffers a stroke during a diplomatic summit. The news cannot become public. At least not immediately. Foreign governments would exploit weakness. Domestic rivals would mobilize. Markets would panic. For 18 days the kingdom functions without officially having a functioning monarch. Only a handful of people know. You are one of them. That realization changes your position forever. Information becomes more valuable than money. You spend those 18 days designing reality. Official schedules continue. Announcements continue. Documents receive signatures. Messages reach ambassadors. The illusion of stability becomes your responsibility. Nobody notices. Which means you succeed. The king recovers partially. The crisis passes. But your role never returns to normal. You are invited into meetings previously restricted to ministers. Military planning sessions. Treasury briefings. Intelligence updates. The room changes. The conversations change. So do you. You begin speaking less. The most powerful people rarely explain themselves. They don't need to. Others interpret their silence. That lesson serves you well. You start planting ideas instead of arguments. Questions instead of instructions. Suggestions instead of demands. People become easier to guide when they believe the destination was their own choice. The manipulation becomes cleaner. Harder to detect. Harder to resist. You tell yourself you're protecting stability. Most manipulators eventually develop a noble justification. It helps them sleep. Level 4, the King's Shadow. The execution order reaches your desk before sunrise. A duke is plotting rebellion. Evidence exists. Not enough for public conviction. Enough for private certainty. The king wants options. You provide 3. By sunset the duke is dead. Officially, a hunting accident. Unofficially, a warning. Nobody asks questions. The court understands the message immediately. The king trusts you now. That changes everything. Trust is the rarest currency inside royal government. Money can be stolen. Titles can be granted. Trust must be earned repeatedly. You become responsible for managing rival factions inside the kingdom. Nobles. Military leadership. Religious authorities. Merchant alliances. Each group wants influence. Each group fears losing it. Your job is maintaining equilibrium. Sometimes that means rewarding loyalty. Sometimes it means manufacturing consequences. You learn exactly how much pressure different people can tolerate before breaking. Everyone has a price. Not always money. Recognition. Fear. Ambition. Security. Love. Find the weakness. Control the person. Simple. Efficient. Terrifying. The kingdom enters its most stable decade in generations. Trade expands. Crime decreases. Tax revenue rises by 40%. Historians eventually praise wise leadership. They never learn how much manipulation supported that stability. The irony doesn't bother you anymore. That version of yourself disappeared years ago. You barely notice its absence. Then the king summons you alone. No advisors. No guards. No witnesses. He offers you a permanent seat on the royal council. For the first time, you stop managing power from the shadows. And begin holding it directly. Level 5, the counselor. The chair is heavier than it looks. Carved black oak. Gold trim. Positioned 6 seats away from the king. You sit in it for the first time while the council debates whether to raise taxes across 3 provinces. The ministers argue for 2 hours. The generals argue for another hour. The merchants threaten economic retaliation. The king says nothing. Neither do you. Then the king asks for your opinion. The room becomes silent immediately. That silence teaches you more than any promotion ever could. Power is not measured by how often you speak. It is measured by how carefully others listen when you finally do. You recommend increasing taxes only in the wealthiest districts while secretly offering exemptions to families connected to military production. The proposal passes. Revenue increases by 18%. The military receives funding. The merchants remain cooperative. Everyone leaves believing they won. That becomes your specialty. Not victory. Management. You stop viewing problems as moral questions. You view them as systems. A rebellious noble becomes a pressure imbalance. A religious dispute becomes a resource allocation issue. A succession crisis becomes a negotiation. The emotional weight disappears. That should concern you. It doesn't. 5 years pass. Your personal fortune exceeds 2 million gold crowns. You own estates you rarely visit. Businesses you never manage. Land worked by people whose names you never learn. Money arrives whether you pay attention or not. Meanwhile your influence expands. Judges consult you before rulings. Generals consult you before campaigns. Foreign ambassadors attempt to buy access through gifts worth fortunes. You refuse most of them. Not because you're honest. Because direct corruption is inefficient. Leverage lasts longer than bribes. Then the king falls ill again. This time everyone knows. And suddenly the question nobody wanted to ask becomes unavoidable. What happens after he dies? Level 6, the Kingmaker. The funeral lasts 9 days. The power struggle begins before the burial ends. 3 heirs. 2 military factions. 4 major noble alliances. Enough competing interests to start a civil war. Everyone expects violence. You deliver something more effective. Consensus. Or at least the illusion of it. For 6 months you move through the kingdom like a ghost. Private dinners. Secret meetings. Closed-door negotiations. Promises made. Threats implied. Evidence revealed. Evidence hidden. You know which nobles are bankrupt. Which generals maintain secret accounts abroad. Which bishops father illegitimate children. Information becomes your army. You never command soldiers directly. You don't need to. The right document can destroy a man faster than a regiment. Eventually the youngest prince takes the throne. Not because he was strongest. Because you decided he would. That realization follows you home one night. You stare at your reflection longer than usual. A king now rules the kingdom because you allowed it. Not because of divine right. Not because of destiny. Because you manipulated enough variables successfully. The thought should frighten you. Instead it feels normal. That frightens you more. The new king trusts you completely. Perhaps too completely. Your signature begins appearing beside royal decrees. Foreign governments negotiate through you before approaching the throne. Military commanders seek your approval before seeking the king's. You have become something unusual. Not ruler. Not advisor. Something in between. The court begins calling you the second crown. Never publicly. Always privately. Always carefully. Because everyone understands what it means. Level 7, the invisible throne. The assassination attempt fails. Barely. A poisoned goblet. A compromised servant. A foreign intelligence service operating through intermediaries. The king survives. 3 days later 12 people disappear. Officially, nothing happened. Unofficially, everyone understands the consequences. The kingdom changes after that. So do you. Security follows you constantly now. Encrypted correspondence. Private guards. Secret residences. You stop attending public celebrations. Stop appearing at ceremonies. Stop trusting coincidence. Paranoia becomes practical at this altitude. Too many people benefit from your removal. Too many people fear your existence. The kingdom stretches across millions of citizens. Thousands of officials. Hundreds of noble families. And somehow the final decisions increasingly arrive on your desk. You approve military campaigns. Trade agreements. Political appointments. Economic reforms. The king still reigns. Technically. But everyone understands reality. The throne occupies the palace. Power occupies you. You begin noticing something else. Loneliness. Not dramatic loneliness. Functional loneliness. Nobody speaks honestly around you anymore. Friends become employees. Allies become clients. Family becomes vulnerable leverage. Every relationship contains calculation. You can't even blame others. You taught them the rules. The kingdom prospers. Trade routes expand. The treasury reaches historic surpluses. Foreign powers avoid conflict. Historians call it a golden age. You know better. Golden ages require architects. Architects require sacrifices. Most of those sacrifices never appear in official records. You stopped counting years ago. Then one evening the king asks a question. A simple question. What happens when you're gone? For the first time in decades, you don't have an answer. Level 8, the ghost of the kingdom. They stop mentioning your name publicly. At first it seems strange. Then it becomes policy. New generations grow up hearing stories instead. Legends. Rumors. Conspiracies. The invisible minister. The man behind 3 kings. The architect of peace. The destroyer of rivals. Nobody agrees on the details anymore. Only the outcome. You are no longer entirely a person. You are becoming an institution. The kingdom enters its 4th decade under systems you designed. Tax structures. Trade policies. Succession mechanisms. Intelligence networks. Everything functions whether you're present or not. That was always the goal. Control so complete it becomes invisible. You spend most days inside a private estate overlooking the capital. The city continues moving below. Markets open. Ships arrive. Courts convene. Soldiers march. Life continues. Without requiring you. That should feel liberating. Instead it feels empty. Because the truth finally becomes unavoidable. You sacrificed freedom for influence. Then sacrificed identity for control. Then sacrificed connection for power. Each compromise seemed reasonable when viewed individually. Together they built a prison. A comfortable prison. A luxurious prison. Still a prison. Your wealth exceeds anything you could spend. Your influence exceeds anything you could openly exercise. Your reputation extends beyond national borders. And yet you cannot simply leave. The kingdom depends on structures connected to your existence. Enemies still remember. Allies still expect. Success created obligations that never expire. That is the final secret of power. The summit isn't a destination. It's a trap. One winter evening you walk alone through a gallery filled with portraits. Kings. Queens. Generals. Heroes. Most are forgotten by history. A few remain remembered. You stop before an empty section of wall. Reserved space. For you. Not yet. Soon. Outside, the capital glows beneath thousands of lanterns. The kingdom is stable. Prosperous. Orderly. Exactly as you intended. Yet you struggle to remember the young clerk who once carried letters through palace corridors. The one who believed information was simply information. The one who still recognized himself. That person disappeared somewhere between ambition and success. You cannot remember exactly where. Then a report arrives from the palace. A new administrative clerk has impressed several senior officials. Young. Observant. Quiet. Excellent memory. The steward recommends accelerated advancement. You read the report carefully. Then set it aside. Somewhere tonight, a young court clerk is staring at a promotion letter he believes will change his life. He thinks he's entering the royal court. He does not understand that the royal court is entering him. But he will.